I've done many of these presentations, but this is the first one that I do not have direct control of my computer on the podium, so I'm hoping this all works. As I said, my name is Gary Thielen. I'm from Iowa. So what's a corn-fed Iowa boy doing talking to you about Panama? Well, something happened to me when I was a young man that I'm sure that many men my age in this audience can relate to. 2 words: draft board. I got drafted in 1969, the 200th anniversary of the birth of Napoleon, one of my heroes. But I was drafted, and the Army said, well, since you have a good talent for languages, we have a language school. And we want to send you there, but you got to give us another year of your life. So I said, okay. And I went to the Monterey Peninsula, not bad duty during a war. And I went to the Defense Language Institute, and then they sent me to Panama. And the reason they sent me to Panama was that they had a policy of sending as many troops there as possible who could speak Spanish, because we had very bad relations with Panama. And so I went down there, and here I am, a corn-fed Iowa boy speaking fluent Spanish in Panama, where most of the people were Hispanics from California, Texas, Puerto Rico, and Florida. So I was quite the item. So I spent a year and a half in Panama. I learned everything I could learn about it, and I studied everything I could study about it. And so here I am. So I need the screen, please, with a PowerPoint on Panama. I feel so helpless. All right. I'm going to tell you about how the Panama Canal works. And guess what? It's not a canal. It's a lake. A canal is a ditch. You fill the water with ditch, you float ships on it. They cross through the Suez Peninsula. Or the Kiel Canal in Germany crosses between the Baltic and the North Sea. Those are sea level canals. Or the most famous one in America up until the Panama Canal was the Erie Canal between Albany and Buffalo. They had some elevation issues there, of course. They had to go up and down over the Adirondack Mountains. But that was quite an accomplishment at the time, dedicated in 1825. But that was a ditch filled with water, and then you floated boats on it. And the barges or boats on the Erie Canal were pulled by mules. That has some influence here on the Panama Canal. Hey, now it's working. What do you know? Okay, we have a map of the isthmus. You will notice that the canal does not go north and south. Whoops. Notice, it curves, so it goes from the northwest to the southeast. That's the direction that we will be going. And there you see the entire canal. And what they had to do was they had to dam up a river. First of all, they get a lot of rain in Panama. On the Pacific side, 70 inches a year, there's a dry season. On the Atlantic side, 130 inches a year, there is no dry season. It rains a lot. Will it rain on us going through the canal? Most likely. So, what they had to do is they had to control this river called the Chagres River, and they did it by damming the river and creating a lake. Now, the French wanted to build a sea level canal, but what were you going to do with that river? Well, they never really got to that point because disease killed 20,000 of their workers or more, and they had to quit. But when the United States got there, they decided our only choice is to build a canal with locks. So they built a lake. And the dam, I'm sorry, I'm pushing the wrong buttons. This is the first time, excuse me. Okay, so they built. Okay, now I push this. Okay, there we go. They come in. There is a dam right here, and that dams up and creates this lake. So ships come in and go through the locks, and they are centered in the locks by these mules connecting cables to the ships. Then they go through the lake under their own power, and then they are lowered down again on the other side. Now, you do have the cut. The big ditch right here, 9 miles. They had to cut that through the mountains. They're called the Culebra Mountains, meaning snake. It's the same range as the Rockies and the Andes. So they had to cut 9 miles out of there, create a ditch, and they had to take the mountains at its lowest point, 130 feet, and dig them down to 35 feet above sea level. And that's what caused all the trouble. And so that's it right there. And they still have trouble with landslides. But that's where they had to take the ship over the mountains to the other side. And so here you see a schematic. We will come in over here at Gatun, and we will go up the 3 locks to 85 feet above sea level. That's the lake right there, Gatun Lake. Most of the time it's 85 feet above sea level, lower during the dry season when they don't have as much water. And each lock is about 28 feet, about 9 million gallons of water, which can be emptied or filled in about 10 minutes. Really amazing what they can do. And then they sail under their own power across the lake. They have a Canal Zone captain, a Panamanian captain, a pilot that guides the ship. Then you get to the other side. They did not have enough solid bedrock to anchor all 3 locks in the same place. So you have 2 different sets of locks. You have Pedro Miguel, 1 set of locks. Then you've got Miraflores Lake, once again under their own power across the lake. And then Miraflores locks right here, 2 of them, and then out to sea. So you've really got 3 sets of locks here, and then 1 and 2 there. But that lifts the ships up. It's all done by gravity. There are no pumps. The water flows from the lake into the locks and then out to sea. About 54 million gallons of fresh water is used for each ship. 30 to 40 ships a day. Imagine all the fresh water. But they don't call it the rainforest for nothing. They get a lot of rain. So it's all done by gravity. Water flowing from above down below. And here you see the control tower. Each set of locks has a control tower where the condition of the water in the locks is replicated inside the tower, and that's where they control everything. The valves that lets the water in, lets the water out. This is the dam. This is the spillway to the dam. At the time they built the Gatun Dam, it was an earthen dam. It was the largest earthen dam in the world. And this is the spillway. Right now it's not spilling any water. It's also an hydroelectric dam. It provides all the power they need to run the canal and everything in what was then the Canal Zone. It was all self-sufficient electrically wise. And where did they get the stuff to make this earthen dam? Well, when they were digging out the big cut, the Culebra cut, they would take that and put it on trains, and that was called spoil. Then the trains would take it over to the dam and dump it into where they were building in the dam. That was called fill. And that's where they got the fill to build the dam. And you look at it from the other side. This is the spillway on the other side, and you see the water flowing out to the sea, the Culebra River. Now here you see a ship. There are approaches going into the locks. They built the locks, a few miles from the ocean to make it safer so that it wouldn't be subject to so much military danger, attack, and so forth. So the locks were put a ways away from the coast so that they would be easier to defend. So you have to go up a channel to get into the Gatun locks, and you have to go out of a channel after the Miraflores locks. And there you see an example of the channel. And ships come in, and there are 2 sets of locks. They didn't have to build them at the time. 2 sets like that. That was visionary to make the canal a 2-way street. And so ships can go in both directions at the same time. When they built this and opened it on August 15th, 1914, there was no need for that. But as time progressed, yes, the traffic did increase, and it was visionary that they built two sets of locks, one beside each other, so you can have two-way traffic. There you see the doors. There's lots and lots of doors. They weigh tons, 80 tons. They are of varying heights. There are 46 gates, and they can weigh 800 tons and up. And guess what? They float. They're hollow on the inside. They can float. So they are from 47 feet high to 87 feet high, depending on where they're placed in the canal. But the ships come into the lock. Water is released through the bottom of the lock until the water is equalized between both locks. Then the mules that are on tracks beside them haul the ship into the next lock, and they're either raised or lowered. Like I say, it's all done by gravity. All the water eventually flows out. Here you see a better view of the canal, and you see the doors. Holding back the water there. The doors all fit flush into the side of the locks. And this is, some of you may visit this. This is the visitor center at Gatun, where you can see all three at once. And it's just amazing to see the ships come and go, but of course they are restricted by size. And you notice over here, this is called a Panamax, meaning it was built specifically to fit through the Panama Canal. The maximum size to fit through the Panama Canal. And ships like this only go through during the day. They don't go through during the night. Here you see a close-up. And those ships are, this is a mule. This is the third generation of mules. The first mules were built by General Electric in the United States. The second generation, going back to the 60s, were built in Japan, and then we have the third generation of the mules. These are electric diesels, and they steady the ships in the locks and keep them centered, which is a tough job. They attach cables. And they are on tracks. And they are called mules because of the Erie Canal. It was mules that hauled the ships through the Erie Canal. So in honor of that, they decided to call them mules. And these are the doors that weigh, like I say, 800 tons and up. They have to be cleaned every once in a while. So here you see, wrong button again. Here you see a clean door. And here you see a door that needs to be cleaned. And they have this huge floating crane called Hercules. And it comes down to the lock, and it will lift the door off the hinges and float it to dry dock for cleaning. And you notice how they fit flush with the side of the lock. But they do turn in towards the ship. So they may be 1,050 feet long, but the maximum length for a ship is 965 feet because the doors turn inward. They're 110 feet wide, but the maximum width for a ship is 106 feet wide. Our ship will fit in, width-wise, we're just about there, but length-wise, we got plenty of room to spare, about 100 feet. And any place is a good place to view the canal on the ship when we go through. And it's really amazing when you're down low in a dock and they're raising you up and you can see everything coming into view as you are raised up, and you see these huge doors in front of you. This is the original Culebra Cut. Now, Culebra means snake, named after the mountains, and they had to cross the Culebra Mountains, and so they called it the Culebra Cut, but then towards the end of construction, the chief engineer died. His name was Gaillard. So they renamed it the Gaillard Cut. So you will hear both names, Culebra Cut, Gaillard Cut. It's about 9 miles long, and this is 1/4 of the transit of the canal. And originally, when this when the canal was opened, the cut was one way. Even though the locks were two ways, the cut was only wide enough for one-way transit. And they did have problems with landslides. It wasn't too long after the canal was opened, there was a landslide. It was closed again until they dug it out. That was very frustrating. And so you can see how land along the canal is terraced to help prevent landslides. Now, the cut has been widened several occasions since the canal was originally built. Here you see it after the 1964 widening, where it became a two-way. And also in 1963, it became a 24-hour waterway. Up until that time, ships only went through during the daytime. But from the 60s, when they widened the cut and they illuminated the canal, ships now go through 24 hours. This ship will pay extra to be guaranteed a transit during the daytime. And it usually starts around 6 a.m., so get up early that morning. And of course, they have to dredge. And so that's a dredge, because the propellers turn things up, so they are constantly dredging. So you will go by dredges as you go through the canal to help keep it open. And you have some high hills at one point where the mountains were at the highest. One is called Gold Hill, the biggest one now, because legend had it that it was full of solid gold, which of course was not true. And so now, today, they have a widened cut, and it's really good for two ships. And then recently, they had to widen it again, because as you're aware, they are putting in new locks that are going to allow the super ships to go through. So they had to widen the cut again. And guess what else they had to do? They had to deepen the lake. Why? They were afraid that the water displacement of all these super ships would cause the lake to rise and top the dam. So they are actually digging the lake deeper to allow a greater volume of water, so that does not happen. The new locks are supposed to be open next August, but it's not going to happen. Since when does anything in war or construction ever go on time? So this was several years ago. They were widening the cut, and here you can see the old width, and here you can see how much they are widening it. And they widened it even more on turns. There are some turns in the cut, and of course, to allow the ships to turn, you have to have an even wider space. So that's the new canal under construction. And down here you can see the new bridge they built in the 70s called the Centennial Bridge that goes over the cut. That's Hercules. That's the big crane, the floating crane at Gamboa, which is in the middle of the canal, which can go and lift the doors off the hinges and take them down to dry dock. It's also good for helping to get ships out of there that have sunk, and a number of ships have sunk in the canal in the past. When I was there, a ship sank in the narrowest part, but they managed to push it against the wall of the cut. And it was there for a year and a half because it was full of cotton and rice. And salvaging waterlogged cotton and rice took a long time before they could raise that ship and get it out of there. But it went down in the cut, but fortunately not in the narrowest part, but it did go down in the cut, and it was there for over a year and a half while they salvaged the ship. I could smell the cotton and the rice being salvaged from my barracks because it was not a good smell. And here you see Gold Hill. Notice how it's terraced. And the new bridge that goes across. And this, of course, is the cut that goes by. So that's the most spectacular part of the canal, is where they actually had to make the dirt fly and dig out the trench across the mountains. And of course, you know that the French tried to do it, and they were going to build a sea-level canal. And they gave up on that and decided they would have to build a lock canal of some sort, but they ran out of money. And the reason is only the resources of a government is sufficient to build a waterway that can take ships across mountains. Private investment can't do it. Now tell that to the guy that wants to build a canal in Nicaragua. He's already signed the agreement, and I have a speech on that. Why aren't we going to the canal?